Homeworld. Classic, innovative, and very well received real-time strategy from the late 1990s and early 2000s. And since the year 2015, it has received a bit of a facelift. Hey there, my name is Pravus, and welcome to Homeworld Remastered. Originally developed by Relic Entertainment, the rights were then purchased by Gearbox Software to take these classic games and bring them into the modern era. And now, Gearbox is sponsoring me to take a look at this game today for two reasons. Firstly, in early 2024, Homeworld 3 is going to be released, a sequel after 20 years. So let's go ahead and build up that hype train. Which leads me to my second point. In order to introduce people to the classic games of Homeworld 1 and Homeworld 2, this remastered collection is going to be free for anyone on the Epic Games Store until August 3rd. Naturally, that means there will be a link in the description down below if, as you watch this video, you like what you see and you want to learn more and experience some classic strategy gaming. Today I'm going to be playing through a skirmish mode, which is the easiest way to show off all of the mechanics of the game, but you should know that both Homeworld 1 and Homeworld 2 have full story-driven campaigns, where you follow a race called the Kashan. In the first game, the Kashan discover an ancient starship on their desert world of Carrick, which contains both an extremely rare hyperspace core and a map supposedly leading to their homeworld, Higera. It then takes nearly a full century for the Kashan to build up a massive mothership with the intention of using hyperspace travel to reach their old homeworld. However, their first test ends in disaster when a hostile alien force destroys their scouting forces and then launches an attack against their world of Carrick and destroys it, leaving only 600,000 survivors aboard the mothership itself. The rest of the first campaign follows the survivors aboard the mothership as they try to reach their homeworld of Higera, and along the way they encounter many dangers, discover significant mysteries about their past, and then they end up with a massive fight and confrontation against the Tyaden Empire, the force that attacked them in the first place. You can safely assume that at the end of the first campaign, they do reach their homeworld, and hopefully all will be well, but of course that then leads into the second game. In Homeworld 2, another alien race called the Vaegir discover a hyperspace core of their own, and a warlord begins a massive conquest against the former star systems of the Tyaden Empire, eventually taking the fight to Higera itself, and the Kashans find themselves needing to flee once again. For the rest of the campaign, the Kashan travel to stars, seeking to thwart their new enemy, discover the mysteries of the ancient progenitor race, and stop the Vaegir warlord from bringing about the end times. I'm not going to reveal any more of the plot than that, though, because I suspect that a lot of the plot of Homeworld 2 is going to lead directly into the plot of Homeworld 3 when it does release next year. So if you want to experience it for yourself, hey, remember, that link exists in the description down below. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with that skirmish mode I promised you. We're going to be playing with the Homeworld 2 version today, though ultimately both games are very similar in terms of their mechanics, so if you understand one, you'll probably understand the second. I'm going to change my player color real quick just because I like to customize, and we'll be playing as the Higarans for this particular match, and our opponents will be the Vaegir. And our ships are now arriving out of hyperspace. We have a mothership and we have a carrier. Fantastic. Alright, so with both of these ships, we'll be using those as platforms to construct, well, pretty much everything else we're going to need, starting with a bunch of these resource collectors, which are basically like our little worker bees. These guys are going to find asteroids and start mining up some resources. I think we start with 5 in total, but I wouldn't mind having a few more than that. Now, if we zoom around on the map over here, we can go into a tactical area like this, which is kind of where I can see the enemy and control a lot of my forces, and you can actually play almost the entire game from this map mode. It would work fine. I'm going to start sending my carrier over here to another pile of asteroids so we can kind of be a little bit forward, closer to the enemy, who should be right here, and try to gather up these resources before they can get to this. But that is admittedly a little bit risky. Now, if we want to construct anything besides just some simple harvesting drones or refineries or anything like that, we need to start getting some facilities, production facilities, built on our carrier and our mothership. I want to start getting fighter facilities on both. This will let me start producing some interceptors and some bombers, which I will make use of to have fast movers that can take out my enemy. If I can harass their mineral line, that would obviously be fantastic. We also will need to get some capital class facilities and maybe some platforms if we want to have defensive gun platforms. A research module would be great because we can use that to start getting upgrades for all of our ships. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we need here. Sensor subsystems and so on. Pretty cool stuff. And let's also go ahead and train up at least one scout. I would like to use a scout to kind of just check. Has the enemy decided to move forward toward any of these other resource nodes? I bet not. They're probably still all around here, but I like to be able to keep an eye on it and know when they're expanding. So there's our scouts. If we want to zoom in on these guys, we can see our squadron now on their move. Let's go ahead and start by scouting over this direction. I want to see what's going on. Now, in the tactical map mode over here, it's not all done in 2D space. I know it looks like everything's done in a plane, but if I want to send these guys over here and then, let's say, drag them down or up like this, that's totally an option for you. If you want to sneak attack your opponent from above or below, or maybe both, that's an option. Go for it. Okay, so that should give us 4 squadrons of interceptors. I've got some more interceptors and bombers on the way, and with that, we should be able to start harassing. I don't think it's going to be enough to actually do any meaningful damage to the enemy. These resource collectors are hardier than you would expect, and taking out the enemy carrier is going to be a bit of a big ask, but if I can harass them and keep them back for a bit, that wouldn't be a bad idea, at least until such a point that I start getting some capital ships. Speaking of which, we are now sort of able to do that. I can start working on some carriers if I wanted to. I do need to get some research going so I can learn how to make frigates, so the sooner we can finish this research module, the better. Fun fact, by the way, as you start constructing things, it drains away resources. If you get down to 0, all production halts. So never let your resources get down to 0 if you can avoid it. Okay, now we have research done. That's going to be good. Can we start working on a frigate facility? Yes, we can, and also a corvette facility. I'm going to start with the frigates, if I'm honest. Corvettes are good. You can get some, like, light gunships and stuff. They're great for shredding through enemy fighters, but, you know, frigates can also do that. They're just more expensive. We can at least upgrade some stuff. If I go to my research, we can now start upgrading things like the engines of our interceptors, our bombers, and so on. Faster fighters can only be a good thing for me. Speaking of which, by the way, my fighters and bombers are ready, so let's go ahead and try to move together. I'm going to go ahead and set them into some formations so that they travel together in some strike forces. And then let's kind of keep an eye on these guys and see what we discover with our enemy. I want to know what they're up to. Whoops, looks like I found the enemy. They are moving in. All right, interceptors on an, well, intercept path. Lots of assault craft, and there they go. Okay. Let's set these guys all to a neutral attack pattern. I want them to be balancing out their damage and their evasion. So now it's going to come down to who's got more strike craft and who can do more goodies. Well, maybe with any luck, we can blast through all their own fighters and leave them defenseless. Ah, and there's their flagship over there. All right, that's definitely too strong for me to take out. And they got a carrier hanging out over this direction, sending out reinforcements. Yeah, I can destroy some of their stuff if this is a good opportunity, but I do not want to commit too many resources here, or else I'll just lose all my fighters. And that would not be beneficial to me, now would it? So it looks like they want to contend me over here with some of these resources. I think my resource collectors will still be okay, but why take any stupid risks? Let's go ahead and build some additional interceptors. Now that I have an advanced research facility on my carrier, taking up another one of my module slots, we can start building out flak frigates. Very good against fighters, and then ion cannon frigates to destroy capital ships and other frigates. That could be kind of good. Or some torpedo frigates. Any of these would be honestly fantastic. I'll take them. Ah, there we go. Beautiful. My first flak frigate. Okay, with that, we should be able to prevent these fighters from being an issue. But I guarantee you they're going to start building a lot of their own assault frigates, so we need to have methods of fighting back against those. Torpedoes and ion cannons, that's the way to go. So what I'm going to go ahead and start doing is improving the manufacturing speed of my mothership as well as my carriers, because I feel like an extra 30% construction speed can only be very, very useful under all circumstances. Now, something I would love to build is a shipyard, and we can place that really close to my mothership over here. The shipyard can be used to start building out the big capital ships. I'm talking battle cruisers. That's something I could use. If I've got battle cruisers, we can definitely start going in for the kill. Oop, okay, I see an enemy moving in on me. It's a heavy missile frigate. I think they've realized they just made a terrible mistake because they are now trying to turn around and get the heck out of Dodge. Actually, they've got a few big ships. Okay, let's try to take out whatever capital frigates they've got sent after me. Let's keep an eye on this. All right, so they sent some fighters. My interceptors will be able to obliterate them. They've got missile frigates and assault frigates. But my bombers should be able to do some pretty good damage. It's really a question of how quickly can my capital ship start getting into the fray. And the answer is not quite as fast as I would like. There we go. The ion frigate is just now starting to get into range. All right. These things are good for melting through the armor of your opponents. So now we're doing some serious damage. We're going to take almost no losses out of this, and they're going to lose a lot. Alrighty, battle cruisers. 4,000 resources is a lot. Yeah, I know that, but I think it's gonna be well worth it. And they're moving in for another quick attack. All right, but this time my forces should be all easily in position, so I think we'll start melting through a lot of this. I said they've built some destroyers of their own, so they're getting some of the big ships. Okay, that's fine though. Destroyer is scary, but once I have a battle cruiser, they're going to weep. Now, maybe you've noticed in this game that a lot of this really does come down to some simple rock, paper, scissors, right? Certain types of ships are better against others, so, interceptors and flak gunships and so on, much better against the fighters, bombers good against capital ships. Knowing what your enemy is trying to send after you and then countering it with the right types of forces, that's the real key to victory. At least until you get battle cruisers. At that point, you just try to take out the enemy carriers. If you can knock out their production facilities, you win the game. Speaking of battle cruisers, there's one right over there. All right, so if we can start making our way over this direction, I would love for the battle cruiser to join the fray. On this battle cruiser, I'm going to go ahead and start building up a fire control tower because, yes, on some of your individual ships, you can still build out facilities and modules. Fire control just makes all of our ships nearby more effective. That can only be a good thing for me. At this point, I think we're just going all in, and hopefully that's not a horrible decision. They've got some lance fighters, whatever those are. Can the flak frigate come back and actually deal with some of these things, or maybe take out some of the fighter craft? They've got a load of gun platforms. Right, they've effectively set up towers all over the place. Scary, okay. And yet, despite all of this, how are we ultimately doing? I'd still say pretty good. My capital ships are definitely ripping through their capital ships. Bigger concern is that I'm going to lose all of my fighters if we're not careful. I can see that becoming very painful very quickly. Oh man, I've lost almost all my fighters at this point, exactly what I was afraid of. They're now using an infiltrator frigate, which I just blew up, which was trying to send some marines to capture my frigates. That would have been a problem. All right, so I'm left with almost nothing but capital ships left. But the good news is we can start burning through some of these gun platforms and stuff very quickly. There we go. All right, we're starting to see some serious damage now. This is working. There we go. There we go. Hit that flagship. I don't suppose it's possible for me to just go ahead and destroy certain modules. Oh yeah, like their frigate facility. If we can destroy the frigate facility specifically, that would stop some of their worst offenders as far as reinforcements. Yeah, here we go, here we go. We're burning through that. They're going to have no more frigates in a minute, and no more frigates is going to make this much, much easier. If I can take out their fighters as well, they have a fire control tower too. We've knocked their flagship down to half health. I mean, that feels pretty good. Oh, looks like they're actually retreating. Okay, say goodbye to that. All right. So now we just mop up the remaining forces, I think. Specifically, I see a carrier trying to escape over here. We can take that out. And it looks like their resource collectors are trying to make a run for it as well, but yeah, my heavy ships like these destroyers and this battle cruiser are just ripping them to shreds. These flak frigates are great, by the way. You can use them to absolutely shred through all enemy fighters and bombers. I love having some of these. Honestly, if you can get nothing but, let's say, some torpedo frigates and flak frigates and then heavy ships like battle cruisers, you can win. If you have enough of them, you can totally win almost any engagement. Oh yeah, look at all these resource collectors. We found their workers. They were trying to set up over here. Oh, that's not going to work for you. Now, one thing I haven't been using, and I should have, is hyperspace. If you are close to a ship that has a hyperspace module, we can use that to hyperspace our way into a fight a lot faster. So something like this, for example. So get closer, and then this guy can jump. Never mind, we won the game. All right, well, the point is, you can use that to directly bring them to the front line. Very, very powerful. Overall, my opponent did pretty decently. It's just once I was able to start crushing some of their early ships and they tried to contest me over the middle ground, it wasn't enough. They didn't have enough fleet diversity. I was building specifically to counter some of their fighters and some of their capital ships. Once I had battle cruisers before they did, that was pretty much the end of it. Destroyed 252 enemy ships. There are other ways to set up your game, of course. You could include things like, let's say, crates for some extra tech or resources, or even relics that they can grant extra resources over time. Or move on to death matches where you have multiple enemies and it becomes a question of who allies with whom temporarily to knock out other players until you become the last man standing, with bounties and everything. That could be kind of crazy. So that's a taste of what Homeworld 1 and 2 have to offer in terms of gameplay by using skirmish mode, but of course, the real fun of the game is in the campaign mode, following the story and trying to solve the mysteries of the progenitors. It's an obviously older style of real-time strategy, but for its time, it was pretty darn innovative and advanced. The fact that you can't actually pause and you always are playing at one speed does mean you always have to be adaptable and paying attention to different areas of the map, even in single player, which can be kind of fun. Not to mention the remastered version really does bring this more into the modern age. Personally, having replayed through the campaigns and having a chance to refamiliarize myself with this game, it definitely makes me very excited about what's going to be happening with Homeworld 3. Once you have a whole new set of controls and a modern RTS experience, oh man, that is going to be fun. But I will remind you, if you want to get prepared for things like Homeworld 3, you should be playing Homeworld 1 and 2 ahead of time, and that means you should go to the Epic Games Store and download this game for free while you can. Thanks again to Gearbox for the sponsorship, very much appreciated, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If so, I would ask you to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, make sure you hit that notify bell, and I will see you guys next time.